Many found the human government's approach to pacifism peculiar. Their history hints at a deep-rooted warrior tradition, yet there seemed to be no clear event that triggered the shift. At least, nothing the humans would admit to. The government permitted humans to work as mercenaries, allowed their colonies to engage in conflicts, maintained a military, purchased and sold arms, and commanded a formidable fleet. Yet, the human government never waged war. In the centuries since humans had taken to the stars, countless requests were made for them to join various wars. They were promised entire planets, immense wealth, and vital resources, but the human government always declined. The most they permitted was the recruitment of their citizens for off-world battles. Human mercenaries proved that this avoidance of war wasn't rooted in some newfound philosophy. They displayed a bravery and fierceness that rivaled the most formidable warrior species. Cunning, adaptable, loyal, patient, resilient, humans embodied every trait prized in a soldier. Stories circulated of humans calling in artillery strikes on their own positions to deny it to the enemy. Tales of fighters continuing the battle after suffering fatal injuries were just as common. Heroic feats of reckless courage were practically expected of them. And yet, the human government remained at peace, raising suspicion among other species. One race was bold enough to provoke them. They detained human ambassadors, boarded their vessels, and disregarded human protests. Furious humans clamored for retaliation, and their alien allies even offered military support. But the human government refused to retaliate. Instead, they dispatched a single envoy to negotiate an end to the hostility. Whatever that envoy said, it worked. That race never challenged the humans again. When pressed for details, their representatives grew visibly nervous, insisting that humans were not to be crossed but refusing to elaborate. A century later, my people made a similar mistake, thinking the humans were weak-willed and timid. We viewed them as easy prey in a galaxy where powerful factions vied for supremacy. Their resources seemed ripe for the taking. In my role, I was privy to the conversation that changed everything, and I now feel compelled to record why it is unwise to provoke humans. Humans have always sought to create a weapon so horrific that it would make war impossible, the human envoy explained. Our first automatic gun was designed with this in mind, and the scientists behind our nuclear weapons had the same hope. The human placed a 3D projector on the table. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. Forgive me if this seems patronizing. The projection displayed a simple star diagram. Gravity pulls hydrogen inward until fusion begins. This is called a Herbig-Haro event, and it produces heat, and this in turn creates pressure that counters the gravitational pull. A balance is maintained for billions of years until the star exhausts its fuel, at which point fusion is no longer viable, and the star's core is no longer capable of producing enough pressure to combat the gravity. When this happens, several outcomes are possible. In one instance, a white dwarf will be formed, which is just a smaller, hotter version of the star you once knew and loved. In this instance, the planetary bodies orbiting the star, if they have life, will experience a slow and rather painful death. However, the other option is much more terrifying. If the mass of the star is sufficiently large, then when the star collapses, immense pressure will reform in the core of the star. So much pressure that it will exceed the force of gravity pulling it in and explode out into space, destroying anything and everything within a couple light years. This is called a supernova. The envoy paused as the model showed these processes in action. We possess a device, though we refuse to call it by name, as humans have a superstition about naming monsters. We call it RA. By temporarily lowering the vacuum energy of a region of space, it can halt the fusion occurring in a star just enough to force it to collapse into a supernova. You're lying, our ambassador snapped. No one could create such a thing. The projection shifted to a star chart, centered on the human system, with one star highlighted. In human records, this was IK Pegasi, the closest star to our home system that had enough mass to go supernova. 300 years ago, we destroyed it during a test of RA, which also prompted the unification of our species. Our ambassador paused, confirming that the star known as IK Pegasi had indeed vanished 3 centuries ago, coinciding with the unification of the human tribes. And now you have another one? Another? No. We've built a new one every 1 Earth year. They are admittedly extremely expensive, and doing more than that would crash our economy. Also, FY1 is currently on its way to the star at the heart of your empire. Now,